Greetings, everyone. I'm happy to present to you the UNESCO Man and the Biosphere program, which is abbreviated as MAB. So first, I will just talk a bit about the history of this program, which is one of the intergovernmental programs within UNESCO. So this Man and the Biosphere program actually emerged at a pivotal moment in global environmental governance when conservation thinking began moving beyond protection only approaches toward an integrated model grounded in science, learning, and international cooperation. From the onset, the animating idea was catalytic rather than commemorative, to create designated territories where biodiversity conservation, sustainable livelihoods, and knowledge generation reinforce one another, and where practical lessons can travel from local experimentation to policy and wider societal change. In the same period, there was a wider scientific mobilization that amplified the sense of agency and the need for coordinated global action. And one of the frequently cited example was the so-called Mountain Statement, where um, a group of scientists published a message to the UN Secretary General somewhere in the 1971 called A Message to Our 3.5 Billion Neighbors on Planet Earth. While this is not a formal UNESCO normative instrument, it is often referenced in UNESCO historical accounts as part of the wider context of environmental cooperation and the expansion of international scientific engagement. So it was some of these ensuing events that led to the establishment of the UNESCO's Man and the Biosphere program in 1971. So this program was conceived as an explicitly interdisciplinary program, bringing natural and social sciences together to advance understanding of human environment interactions and to support, rational use approaches that could reconcile conservation objectives with development needs. And so one of the key um, elements of the Man in the Biosphere program is the designation of biosphere reserves. And biosphere reserves, um, in very simple terms, these are socio ecological, ecosystems or environments where we try to harmonize, conservation efforts with sustainable development outcomes. So as part of a peace building process, where we are able to demonstrate sustainable development models where humans are able to live in harmony with nature. And these biosphere reserves, per the statutory framework, have three zones. So there is the core zone, there is the buffer zone, and there's also what we call the transition zone. And these zones, according to the statutory framework, encompasses a mosaic of ecological systems representative of major biogeographic regions, including uh, a gradation of human interventions. And it has to be of significance for biological diversity conservation and also provide an opportunity to explore and demonstrate approaches to sustainable development on a regional scale. So as you can see, the core zone is actually a legally constituted area that is dedicated to the long-term protection of biodiversity, consistent with the conservation objectives of the Biosphere Reserve, and of sufficient size to meet, those objectives. The primary role of the core area is to provide reference conditions and information on ecosystem functions and processes. And then we also have, the buffer zone that's clearly identified areas surrounding or contiguous to the core areas where only activities compatible with conservation objectives may take place. The main focus of the buffer zone is to enable the development, testing, and demonstration of management practices that help maintain semi-natural ecosystems and their biodiversity. And then we have the last um, area, which is the transition area or transition zone, which is normally the outer zone where sustainable resource management practices are promoted and also developed. The transition area primarily supports and encourages local communities, enterprises, and other actors to maintain sustainable socioeconomic and land use systems. So these zones are designed to collectively support and also fulfill the three main functions of the biosphere reserve, which I'm going to talk about soon. So if you look at the three main functions, we have the conservation function, which is towards conserving biological and also cultural diversity. And then we have the development function, which is um, to foster some sustainable economic and social development, outcomes, including, of course, cultural diversity. And then we have the logistical support, where we are able to conduct some research, promote models for, education and training, and also research and monitoring that is linked to nature conservation and sustainable development at the local level, while also taking into account national and global scales. The Biosphere Reserve has a set of, institutional arrangement. So there is scientific institutions before an area is designated as a biosphere reserve. The management of this reserve has to be constituted, and it involves having scientific institutions, management authorities, um, various kinds of stakeholders that play very integral role in ensuring that the biosphere reserve are able to deliver, the function by which they were designated. And so when you look at here, there are different kinds of stakeholders from decision makers. There are also managers, there are institutions, there are experts, the local communities, different associations, and the media, who all play very integral role in ensuring the protection of this site, but also making sure that the site is able to deliver, all these three functions that I spoke about. At the moment, there are about 784 biosphere reserves, and as you can see, from the time that the MAN and the Biosphere program was constituted, and the first biosphere reserve was designated somewhere in the 1970s. There has been very significant gradual increase in the designating of these sites, leading to, as at the end of 2025, about 784 of these biosphere reserves located in 142 countries. According to current figures, 70% of UNESCO member states host at least one of these biosphere reserve. And if you look at the regional distribution, there are about 100 biosphere reserves in Africa. There are 41 biosphere reserves in Arab states. There are 136 biosphere reserves in Latin America and the Caribbean. There are 186 biosphere reserves in the Asia and also the Pacific, and there are 321 biosphere reserves in Europe and North America. And as I mentioned earlier on, this is really a very big ecosystem, what we call an ecosystem of ecosystems, because there are different thematic networks, that come into play. You know, when we talk of the World Network of Biosphere Reserves, there are different thematic networks, based on the unique characteristics of each biosphere reserve. Um, and we also pride ourselves to mention that about 300 million people live in biosphere reserve, um, and about 6% of the world population live, in this biosphere reserve. So making it very significant socio-ecological environment, which is not only for conservation, but also as a settlement, for people. And in all these biosphere reserves, we have significant proofs that have shown that they are, important models, for building peace between humanity and also nature. Recently, UNESCO in China, adopted the Hanzhou Strategic Action Plan, which is a 10-year roadmap, that positions biosphere reserves as key platforms for delivering global sustainability and biodiversity outcomes or targets with locally relevant action. And so, if you look at the Comin Montreal Biodiversity Framework, the Hanzhou Strategic Action Plan contributes significantly to this, but of course also to climate actions detailed in the Paris Agreement. And as I mentioned earlier on, there are parts of the biosphere reserves that are also focused on research, and there's a lot of research on disaster risk reduction that also makes the biosphere reserve, also positions the biosphere reserves as a contribution to the implementation of the Sendai framework on disaster risk reduction. So, in the nutshell, this is the MAP program and its biosphere reserve, which we are promoting in different regions and in different countries, and believing that with the nomination or designation of biosphere reserves, a lot of countries will be able to meet their national development targets, but also be able to accelerate progress towards the achievement of global biodiversity and also climate commitments. Thank you very much.